Hi guys, this is Orichikochi again and welcome to another video. Again, like, subscribe guys and leave a comment on the video. I'm back again guys. I'm happy to be with you again and I hope you guys have had an amazing evening, a good night. And I'm going to talk to you about Manchester United. Up the Reds guys. And I'm going to give you my thoughts and my viewpoints on the game. I just watched the game between them and PSG. Right now is a preseason game, but I'm also going to give you my thoughts on the deals that they've done so far, the team, how the team looks tactically, what they're trying to do. Also, most importantly, what they need to do from where they are and what the team is looking like structurally, what they need to add, and generally what is more to come from the team, from where they are and what they are going to. So I just wanted to give my brief view and what the team looks like, what they need to add, how they are playing, what they need to improve on, and what are the good things that they are doing so far that I think they can take into next season and capitalize on. So those are the things that I'm gonna generally focus a lot on, because I think that's one of the things that, as much as there's a lot of thoughts, there are always negative things or things that we always want to say. We always have to be balanced and give props when props are due in terms of the team, how the team is looking, what good things that should do, and how is the team growing. So I just wanted to give my viewpoint on that, guys. And first of all, guys, I'm going to talk about the game. And Man United drew 1-1 against PSG, but Man United really played well. I generally think in terms of what they had, they played reasonably well. There were good parts from what I saw. As you know, guys, Man United structurally generally playing a 4-2-3-1. The only changes that they made from the previous game was the fact that they played Nusama Mazraoui as a fullback, as a right back, and then they still kept the two centre backs in heaven and Harry Maguire. They had Luke Shaw as the left back. They had Andre Santos and Mason Mount as the two midfielders. They had Shea Lacey as the number 10. They had Ahmad as the right winger, and then they had Patrick Dodo as the left wing, and they had Mbeumo as a striker, which is something that if you've noticed, guys, from the previous videos, he always tries to do. So from me looking at the team and me looking at how the team played, I generally think that United really played well. They kept the ball. When they did have the ball, they kept it very well. When they were parts where they were pressing PSG, they did press them very well. Even though I do think that one of the issues that United has is that their pressing is quite passive. They're not a team that is a pressing machine. They'll press when it's necessary to do, but generally they like to stay in their mid block to low block in defense, keep the spaces small, be compact, and make sure they reduce the spaces in between the midfield attack and defense. They make sure they are compressed and they limit the space for the opposition team. But what they did, they had good moments. And let's start. I always like to start with the building up. United generally likes to build up in a block. I will always like to say United builds up in a block where they have the defenders, the two center backs. Generally they like to stay within the width of the 18-yard area. Then I have the two central midfielders who will come in here. And one thing, if you've noticed from Manchester United, is that their midfielders are generally close to each other. Teams do that. Generally, teams that play in a 4-2-3-1 generally build in that two block where they have two central midfielders stay to each other. But what you've noticed from United is that Andre Santos generally is given the responsibility to be the first line, who's given the responsibility to come and take the ball from the centre backs. And generally, you'll find that the central midfielder, the other who I like to call the free eight, will generally stay close to him and is only there to act as a certain passing player, to layer up, especially when it comes to when they start to move the ball out wide. He will be the other player who will try to make sure that he connects with the fullbacks and the wingers, because the fullbacks will stay out wide and then the wingers will drop inside. And then one thing you've noticed is that United don't have a particular passing or building up scheme where they pass through in a certain way. Their players generally occupy certain zones of the field. You'll find that they will occupy certain zones, and the reason why they occupy certain zone is that when the ball does go to that area, Those players are there in order to act as a link or as an outlet for them to be able to play with. So generally players are given the responsibility. They generally, from what you've noticed, United generally have to have the positional freedom to move wherever they need to, but they just occupy certain zones of the field, especially when they are passing or when they are trying to build up. And then if they face against a team that generally will try to press them very hard, that's when United, one thing that I see from them is that they don't mind really playing the ball long and playing the ball, or especially, but they'll play the ball long into a certain area of the field. It's generally out wide because they don't really like to play the ball into the midfield unless maybe they are playing the ball to a Sheshko or a Zexi, who can generally trap the ball or play through the second balls from there, then they can play through. But they like to play the ball to a set or out wide to the certain areas of the field where they've occupied, so that they can put themselves out of danger, and then they play from there. If they win it, then they play from there. But generally they just try to generally occupy. That's how they try to build up. And from the defense to the midfield to the attack, they generally don't have certain passing principles that you notice. But one thing you see is that there's a lot of slickness when they do get through the gears in their passing. Especially Andre Santos, I really like him. I'll start with Andre from the midfield. I really like his passing ability, his defensive awareness, his positional awareness, discipline. He understands where to be when the team doesn't have the ball. But the other thing that I like for him is that he's a player who is proactive to danger, is not reactive. When you have a proactive midfielder who understands where the danger is going to come from, he smells, he can be able to put out the fires before they even happen. And that's one thing I like about him, is that he's not a defensive middle per se, but as an all-round midfielder, you can see that he has a good sense of knowing where he needs to be. His passing is very good, he's very secured, generally plays short, doesn't keep the ball a lot, generally likes to play and move it quickly. And the other thing that I like about him is that his line breaking passes, especially be in tight areas, especially trying to play through the opposition midfield, is very good. He gives more about that. He plays that pass that Michael Carrick used to play for Man United, where he could just play the ball quick in behind, and then it automatically turns United to attack the opposition defense very quickly through one touch, two touch passing, and then they can play through with pace. And that's what he generally likes, which is a very good trait. Yes, physically might not have the physicality to run and cover a lot of ground and have the physical but you can see that he understands where he needs to be, and that's a very, very good quality to have. Mason is a very good player with him, because Mason can play. He understands which pockets to occupy when United do have the ball. He's very technically secure, can play, can combine. He generally gets given the responsibility to join in attack as the additional midfielder besides the number 10, to combine and to create good overloads in certain parts of the field. But you can see that, which is one of the struggles, is that unfortunately Mason is injury prone, and again in the game, I think in the 90th minute, he got out, is injured, and it's disappointing because he had good moments. You could see that he was building himself up really well, but unfortunately I think he's injured, and I think that's another midfielder that's an area United need to add. And that's where as the video continues, I'll give my thoughts on what they really need from there. But Mason is injured. Ahmad had a very good game, very strong, very good runner. He's a very good, works very hard defensively. There are three balls that he wins. When he pressed, he won them back, and they immediately put United on the attack. So that's one good thing about Ahmad, is that he's a very hard worker, can play out wide, puts the opposition defender under pressure, can easily, when he has the ball, can dribble, can easily drop into the pockets, can stay out wide, isolate his defender and play 1v1 and beat his man. But I think the thing with him, which is still something that he lacks, is in one of the balls where he had to cut back to Lacey, his final his final product is one of the things that he's lacking. He still needs to create and score a lot more goals, and he needs to refine his final ball. Lacy, very good, well played in the pockets. Sometimes I do think that because of how the team plays, he does sometimes, you don't see a lot of him, but when he does have the ball, you can see that he does have the ability to play, which is a very good thing. And I think he will grow. He's still young. He will grow into the position. You can see that because he's been playing most of the time as a right winger, but you can see that Carrick likes to play him as a number 10. And I think from his lower center of gravity, from his ability or dribbling ability, of his close control, I do think that the number 10 suits him very well, and I think he'll grow into that position. I think, and then I think he had a relatively good performance, and he's been playing a lot this preseason, so which is a good thing. I think Brian Mbeumo again, he gives Carrick likes. What Carrick likes about Brian is the fact that Brian can occupy the defenders by his speed, especially when United win the ball back. He can always quickly running behind and become an outlet for the opposition defense as soon as he has the ball. So I think that's one thing that I've noticed from Brian that Carrick likes to do. He likes to use him because he's very physical. When he does have the ball, it generally, especially if he has the ball and he has the defender pinned, it's very rare that you could find him getting run over the ball. But I think the biggest thing that Brian struggles with is the fact that he's not very good at dribbling. You know, he's generally a finisher. And I think one of the things that is a bit frustrating with him is that Brian loses the ball when he doesn't need to. Sometimes his passing is very erratic in terms of him being able to play. And that's why I see a very good player. You need to be able to be a player that can easily play out wide and play in congested areas. But I think when he plays in congested areas, he does generally have a heavy touch. Generally he's on and off when it comes to playing 1-2 touch passing and then playing, and his passing generally is erratic. So that's one thing that generally frustrates me when Brian plays in that attacking role where you need to be comfortable and secure in position. That's where I think he becomes a bit frustrating, and his decision making there sometimes is up and down. But when he does get an opportunity to shoot or does get a goal scoring opportunity, like you saw, the ball he got, just he traps it into his cycle, and then he shoots and he scores. And that's one thing you know about Brian, is that he will always be a goal scoring threat. And then when it comes to Patrick Dogu, Patrick is a very good player, he's a powerful runner. But again, just like Brian, I do think sometimes one thing about Patrick is that sometimes he keeps the ball a lot longer than he needs to. You know, sometimes you can see that he keeps the ball when he needs to play too quick, when he needs to play quick. Being able to understand when to play quick and when to keep the ball is something that I think will come with time. There were times when the ball got played to him, and just like Brian, when they have to play in congested areas, being able to play a dribble or play with skill, play 1 touch or play 2 touch, you can see that sometimes he keeps the ball when he doesn't need to, and generally they lose the ball. And when you play against very good teams, they will put you teams because then they'll play off turnover. So that's one thing that they really need to improve on, because generally United doesn't really play with a structured attacking pattern. You can see that United generally, from what I see with Michael Carrick, Michael wants to play he gives the players a lot of positional freedom, but within their roles. You know, if a player is staying out wide, he knows in that area what he needs to do, what they need to do. And generally when United get into the attacking half into the final third, players are generally given the positional freedom to move in when they need to. And I think that's one thing that they do, and they are a lot better in terms of their passing, the conviction of their passing. And I'll say conviction of their passing because that's where United still have a lot to grow, because as much as United, one of their biggest strengths is being able to play off turnover ball or play on counter-attacks, which is their biggest strength. But United from this season, and especially in parts of last season where they were under Michael Carrick, they need to show a lot of growth in being able to play against teams that sit deep. But their passing was a lot better. They've shown good moments when they do have the ball, because they need to keep the ball a lot longer for long periods of time, you know. But their passing patterns, their building up schemes, the overloadings when to overload wide, when to overload the middle field, the central areas, when it's to play 1-2 touch passing, when it is to create with triangles. That's one area they still need to improve on so that they can bring another threat to opposition teams. So that's one thing that I think for United they still need to improve on, but they did it in moments, and I'm very happy to see that they do that. And when I talk about the team strategically and structurally, I think Michael is not really looking to play in a certain pattern of play. He wants to have his technical players shine, and that's why I think United really need to invest in bringing more technical players into the team. Not necessarily pacey players, but players who are much more technical, because when they're going to play more in Europe and they're going to play, and now because they're in a better position league-wise and form-wise, teams are gonna try to sit deep and negate them space, and they need to have technical players who will improve the team. And that's why I think when I move into what they need to add, I think their midfield now, because of, and if you notice the first goal that they conceded against PSG, the turnover when they lost the ball because they didn't press it, or when teams will then press them effectively or will play through them, because of the lack of pace in their central defenders. And it's Harry, it's Lisandro, it's Heaven, it's Matthias de Ligt. Because of the lack of pace in those front four players, the only player who has pace and can play in large spaces is Lenny. But Lenny, I do think that he still does look like a deer in headlights, where sometimes his positional discipline and his understanding of when to drop into the midfield, when to position himself when there's space, you can see that it's still an area he still has to grow in. And as such, I think it's going to take a bit of time for him. He needs to play to really develop into that. But I think more of the front foot players, that the Lisandro, the Harry, if they're going to play in that way, I still think they need a more athletic central defensive midfielder. And that's why I'm moving into the players that they still need to add. I think in terms of their defensive midfield, I would have loved a player. I want my team to be technical. I don't necessarily think it's always important to have a physical prowess, a guy that runs up and down. But when I look at the makeup of the defensive of what United are going to do, they're going to try to put their fullbacks out wide. And their defenders' lack of pace, I think you need to have a midfielder that can cover a lot of ground, is better in possession rather than a Manu Ugarte. And that's why I think profiles of a Manu Kone or Roland Chouameni and Carlos Baleba is so important, because those players are going to give players like a Tillemans, the Brunos, the Andre Santos, if he does play with them, the capacity to be able to go forward, because I do think Andre is a central midfielder, is a box-to-box midfielder, has that capacity. But I think they need a player who can cover a lot of ground, but is also equally as good in possession, in him being able to play from the back. Because I think the defensive, when United are going to be put under pressure, they will have a lot of issues when they play against teams that have a lot of pace, and teams will look to occupy, especially their full-back areas. And that's why I think they need to have a central defensive midfielder who can sniff out danger quickly and can cover space and cover ground over large parts of the area, because I think that's one thing that they need to do. But I really do like the fact that United want to be a more technical team. They want to be a team that wants to play more in possession, wants to keep the ball a lot longer. And when you want to be a team that keeps the ball a lot longer, that means that you have to build good shapes, you have to have good actions in midfield, you need to have good pictures that you are showing to each other as players, and you have to be secure in possession. And I think that's one thing that I would like. So I think they still need a defensive midfielder like that. I also think that, guys, they need another winger, because for me, as much as Marcus Rashford is a very good player, but I don't think the Marcus Rashford that is coming to United is the Marcus Rashford that all of us are excited for, because he's a player that plays on confidence and is a player who plays on moods. Sometimes you can get a good Marcus, sometimes you can get a bad Marcus. And United, if you've noticed the fullbacks and the wingers of United, They are very hard workers. Ahmad, Brian, Matthias Cunha, Dogu. Those are guys that when they do play out wide, they work very hard. And I don't think Marcus has the capacity to work and play and help his fullback the way that those guys do. And because United, as I said, are not a pressing team that is always going to press the whole game. They're a team that is very passive. So there are moments that United are going to stay out wide. They're going to be compacted and play in shape and play in a mid-block to low block. So I do think that they need another winger, because I don't think Marcus, a lot of Manchester United fans like me, have the confidence to believe that he can come in and ultimately take his position in the team, because I still think that position is Matthias Cunha's to lose. And also Patrick Dogu, I do think is going to have a big season. So there's a lot for there. So I think if United can get a deal for him, I would be looking at a player like Iliman Ndiaye, because I really think I like his ability. He's comfortable, he's a dribbler, he's skillful, and I think it adds to what type of team United wants to be with Iliman Ndiaye there, because you can see he's comfortable in possession, he can beat his man, he's a good dribbler of the ball, he's very comfortable, can play on either wing, and I just like his style, the style of him, of what he looks like as a player is very good. I think it's a player that you would suit very well into United, because he can easily play in short spaces, he can easily play one touch, two touch, he's very skillful. And I think that's the type of player United need to look for beyond a player who always plays in space. And that's why I think Ineos needs to back Michael Carrick. You know, they need to back him, because he's, from the team he has right now, he's showing very, very good. United are looking like a very, very good team if they can add the additions that they need to add. And then the last position I think is left fullback. I think Luke Shaw is a very good player, but I think all of us know that last season, it's his age and his capacity, his injury record means that you just never know whether he has the capacity to last the whole season. And United this season have Champions League, so United needed to add another fullback. I would have loved a player like Lewis Hall, but I just think United's, and that's where I think I have a bit of a problem with United. United's a lack of conviction in terms of going after the target. If United wanted a fullback, I do think that they should have read the market very early and went for Lewis, because you could have noticed that there were a lot of players that were going to leave Newcastle. And if United had registered their interest in Lewis early on, when he had fallen out with Eddie Howe, I think if United he was one of the first one or two players that had left Newcastle, United would have gotten a very good deal. But afterwards, what's transpired with Newcastle ever since? Of course, I'm not surprised that Newcastle have immediately then said that they're closing the door on his move. And the scary thing with him is, for me, is that next season, there are teams that are going to look after him. I do think Chelsea's going to go back for him. I do think a team like Man City will be looking at him. And I think, especially when I look at United and the way they do deals, I think they have priced themselves out of a deal. I'm scared that they would have priced themselves out of doing a deal for him. The only way that they can get back in the deal for him is to try and make sure they get, like they did with Brian Matthias, get his go-ahead early and let him choose them ahead of every other team, and then they could negotiate the price down with Newcastle. But that's the type of player that I would have wanted. The other player that I would have wanted, that I think that is a second option, is Anthony Robertson from Fulham. He's a very good player. I think he had a lot of injury problems last season, but as a backup to Luke, I think he's a very good backup to him. So I think United could be looking at him. And also I think getting him this season would be good, because I think Luke Shaw has 1 year left on his contract. So if they could get him for 30 to 45 million, he has as a backup, depending on what happens with Luke next season, they could always try and get Lewis Hall when Anthony's still there. So I think that's the what I'm trying to look at. And then as a backup striker, I think they still do need a backup striker, because guys, for me, looking at a player like Joshua Zirkzee is not a striker. He's more of a false nine. He's more like a Roberto Firmino. And I think that's where you could see that he doesn't have that smell in the box of being a striker. He's a very good technical player. I do think he's more of a 10. And I just think that because of the team that United are, it's always gonna be, he's always not gonna suit there, because United striker, they're looking to have a striker that scores goals, because their wingers United are not consistent high scoring wingers, you know. If let's say a Brian was giving you 15 to 20, and Ahmad was giving you 15 to 20, and Matthias was giving you 15 to 20, Patrick Dogu was giving you 10 to 15, Bruno was giving you 10 to 15. I think if Zexi was giving you at least 10 goals and was playing as more as a 10 and giving a lot of ability to the team to play, I think he would have been more accepted. But the fact that he's not a goal scorer, and the fact that Brian and Ahmad and Cunha are not consistent high scoring players, I think it's going to be an issue for him to stay within the team. And that's why I think, and Benjamin Sesko, all of those players are players that are not consistent enough to put the cap on them and saying that he's going to give you 15 to 20 goals. You know, they still have to show it, you know. So because of that, I think Joshua, it's going to be difficult for him to stay. I think they need an experienced head. It would have been nice if they could have gotten maybe a Danny Welbeck, or even Robert Lewandowski for me. I wouldn't have minded a player like Robert Lewandowski as being as a backup to him. But I do think it's going to be difficult for them to get that. But I still think that they need to get that. But in general, guys, I just wanted to give my points that the team looks good so far. But the onus is on Ineos to back Michael. I think he's shown good parts so far from the team. But I think they understand which holes they need to fill. And I think it will be quite a big shame if they don't back Michael Carrick in those areas. But so far, the team looks good. There's still more to come. But I think I'm quietly pleased with what I've noticed so far. So guys, more's gonna come. The next game they're gonna play is Leeds on Wednesday. I'll give my thoughts on that when the time comes, but more videos are gonna come. But guys, just wanted to give you my thoughts on the game, my viewpoints on where I stand, and yeah, hopefully more good is gonna come from the team. But I really appreciate you guys coming on this video. I appreciate you. More is gonna come. Hope you enjoy the evening. Until I see you next time. Bye bye. Sharp.